Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you, Bishop Pumloana, for the introductions. And we want to welcome everyone who is joining us this morning as we share our concerns and make our pleas regarding the experiences of God's people in Mozambique. I will read the statement that was produced by FOCCISSA, and we are showing the statement on the screen for your information. After reading the statement, we will welcome questions, and the General Secretaries from the member churches will respond to these questions depending on where they are coming from. I will read. The agony of Cabo Delgado. The Christian councils of Southern Africa urge immediate intervention into Cabo Delgado, Mozambique. The General Secretaries of Christian councils in Southern Africa virtually met recently under the auspices of the regional organization, the Fellowship of Christian Councils in Southern Africa, FOCCISSA. At their meeting, the General Secretaries received a report from Mozambique on the brutal attacks on the civilian population by the rebels in the northern province of Cabo Delgado, with countless human rights violations, rendering the province to be under humanitarian crisis. Reports of horrible beheadings of people, collection and trafficking of parts of human bodies, and the large-scale displacement of populations into poverty as refugees in neighboring provinces. All yearn for intervention. As the prophet Isaiah says in the name of God, he saw that there was no one and was shocked because there was no one to intervene. Isaiah 59, the first part of verse 16. We heard of the attacks on isolated villages, burning houses, executing the opponents, and robbing commercial stores, using attack and escape tactics. We listened with horror to the reports of the murder of civilian populations, often with dismemberment and mutilation. More than 10% of the province's population has now been displaced. As FOCCISSA, we are moved by Christ's compassion for these fellow citizens of the world. The people of Cabo Delgado are experiencing a major humanitarian crisis, and we are addressing various bodies and institutions in this regard. We seek to broaden the message that the insurgents in northern Mozambique is not just a Mozambican problem. It is a Southern African regional emergency, thus an African burden that cannot be globally ignored. In our compassion for these people, we recall the words of the gospel in Matthew 9:36, that states that the people fainted and spread out like sheep that had no shepherd. In this context, we call for the support of the terrified people of Mozambique. We gratefully acknowledge the dedicated prayer call made previously by All Africa Conference of Churches, as well as the statements of support made by the World Council of Churches. We will be working with these bodies to find new actions to support the people of Cabo Delgado. We urge the human rights organizations of our countries and the African Commission on Human Rights to urgently address the human rights crisis in Mozambique. We call on the countries and governments of Southern Africa Development Committee, the SADC, individually and collectively, to respond urgently to the insurrection in Mozambique, as in fact, this is not a Mozambican crisis, and very soon it will involve the entire region and impact physically and economically on the lives and livelihoods of the poor in the region. In addition to the insurrection in Mozambique, we observe similar patterns in other parts of the continent, such as the Democratic Republic of the Congo and other parts of East and Central Africa. To this end, we implore the African Union to get involved and help mobilize resources to support the government and the people of Mozambique to quell this insurgency and ensure that perpetrators are brought to book for the sake of justice and peace. Further, we implore the United Nations to keep a close eye on these crisis situations besieging our beloved continent before it is too late, when it leads to the dismantling of the Mozambican state due to the greed driven by considerable natural resources of Cabo Delgado. We appeal to business entities to raise their hands to provide help to this stricken province. We call on mobile network operators to consider offering free calls or even certain quota of free calls and texts for people to raise alarm and seek help. Motor vehicle companies could offer support to the humanitarian aid agencies and churches with off-road vehicles to transport essential supplies to mitigate the harshness of their experience, and vehicles to provide for field health services and to support the security services. In this desperation, we have children, mothers, disabled people, chronically sick and elderly people, not to mention victims ravaged by COVID-19, struggling to breathe. Companies involved in resource extraction in the province must contribute to finding of lasting solutions of the province and not limit themselves to the surfeit of their operations. We appeal to every sector to play their role in the hour of want. As for FOCCISSA, we strongly call upon the government of Mozambique to take full charge of and responsibility for the security and safety of its citizens and dwellers of the land. This socio-economic and humanitarian complexity is clearly also a governance and military challenge, requiring proactiveness by the government. However, we learn that the Mozambican government appears ambivalent about recognizing this for what it is, downplaying it as a police matter of criminality. We appeal for the courage to act on this with the requisite level of engagement. The government must introspect about the social and economic factors that make Cabo Delgado fertile and ripe for this type of insurrection, so as to address the drivers of this conflict. In this process, the government and the people of Mozambique can work together in the rebuilding of their society and to work with the affected communities for clearly improved quality of life for which Jesus, our Lord, came, that all may have life and have it more abundantly, as it is said in John 10, verse 10. As the church in Southern Africa, we commit to praying with you, particularly during this season of Lent and up to Pentecost. We submit ourselves to focused prayer for divine intervention in your land. As for FOCCISSA, we shall work with the Christian Council of Mozambique in declaring a time of simultaneous prayer for the grace of restoration and for peace of God. To the churches and the Mozambican people, hear the words of the prophet Isaiah. Do not fear, because I am with you. Do not fear, because I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will support you with my victorious right hand. These are the words from the prophet Isaiah 41, verse 10. This comes, we come to the end of the reading of our statement, and we will open space for questions, and I will hand over time to our moderator. Thank you very much for paying attention.